Hey folks, this is Meredith from the Papery Craftery, and today we're going to be making quilling paper zinnia. A lot of different papers I'm going to need today because I'm actually making two different zinnia flowers. For one, I have the crimson paper here at 1/8 inch wide, plus a little bit wider pale yellow. And then for the petals of the first flower, I'm going to be using these three different shades, kind of yellow into a coralish orange paper. And then for the other zinnia, I have this wider crimson paper, a little bit of raspberry for the petals, and then we're also going to be using a tiny bit of this pale yellow again. And I'll go over all of that in detail when we get into the individual flowers, so don't worry about that. I'm going to be using my needle tool here, and I do have this longer slotted tool that I'm going to be using just for a moment, and I'll share that later on as well. I have my small scissors here because we're going to be fringing a lot of paper. I have my quilling tweezers as well. I am going to be building most of this on my cork board, so I have that covered in parchment and some pins. We're going to be measuring a little bit, so I do have my ruler here. And then for glue, I have my Elmer's in my needle nose container, just a white glue, and then some tacky glue for when we start building the flowers and putting all the pieces together. Here are some examples of zinnias. And like I said, I'm doing two different types today because I just couldn't decide what to do. So some of them are going to have these multi-level petals with some swirls up at the top and a little bit of fringe in the center. And then the other version has less petals, still fringe in the center, but kind of that star shape as well. And we're going to start with the first version. So I have this long crimson colored paper, just a dark red. And that's what I'm going to be using to make the very center of my first zinnia. I need about 8 inches of this crimson paper, and I'm just going to roll that from end to end, just making it into a tight coil. So rolling that on my needle tool. If you want to use a slotted tool for this, you are absolutely welcome to. And once I get towards the end, leaving it on my tool and just applying a tiny little bit of just a white craft glue and getting that all rolled up to the end. And again, I'm not letting this open up at all. So this is just going to be a tight coil. And we're just leaving it in that shape. And then you can set that aside to dry and to set fully. And we're going to move on to the next part of this flower, which is going to be a bit of fringed paper. So I have here about 2 inches of a very pale yellow paper. It is 3/8 inch wide. I will leave links, as always, to all the different tools and supplies, including the papers that I use, in the description box for this video. But I'm just using my craft scissors here and just making the tightest fringe that I can, just freehand, not going all the way through because I want this to stay in a strip. Just kind of running my hands down until I get to the very end. You don't have to make yourself crazy and try to make every little fringe exactly the same. Just do your best and just get as close to the end as you can. A couple more snips there, and that is good enough. And we're going to use this to wrap around that little crimson center that we made a few minutes ago. So just apply a little bit of glue just to the bottom edge of this coil here because we're going to want the fringe to be able to open up a bit at the top. If you have cut through your fringe, because this is kind of delicate, if you cut a little bit further than you meant to and it starts breaking apart as you're rolling it around, just glue it back on. It's really okay. Nobody's going to notice that when it gets completely wrapped around, because we're going to wrap this entire thing a few times, as long as it takes here. So I've got it almost wrapped around once, and just add a little bit more glue as you go, and just keep rolling that on up until you get to the other side. We're just going to jump along here for a second. And now we have gotten our yellow fringed paper wrapped completely around the center of our flower. And for me, at this point, this is just slightly too tall. I'm going to take my scissors and give a little bit of a haircut, just the slightest amount of the end of this fringe all the way around. And just takes a couple seconds here. And you might be thinking, why did you use this wide paper if you're just going to cut it off? Just because the 1/8 inch paper is a little bit too short and the 3/8 inch is a little bit too long. So just got to make some adjustments sometimes. Doesn't have to be exactly even. Just do your best. We just want the fringe to be just a little bit taller than that center coil for today. So that's what we're looking like at this point. So now we are going to move on to the petals for this flower. And again, this is the one with lots and lots of different layers of petals, and I'm going to be making them in 3 different colors. So to start off with, I need strips of my palest color, which I'm going to be using this pale yellow. Those are going to be 9-inch strips. And then my medium size is my medium color, this deep yellow. I need 11-inch strips of that. And then my darkest, sort of, it's this coral color. I need 13 inches for that size petal. Now we're going to need a lot of each of these. I just did one as an example. And all we're going to be doing for every single size and every single color is just making teardrops. So one of the most basic shapes you can make in quilling, which is the teardrop. You're going to roll it all the way up on your tool. If you want to use the slotted tool, that's totally fine. And then I like to just let mine open up a bit in my hands until the layers are all about even. Pinch one side and then glue that to seal. And that is it. The great thing about this project is it is very, very beginner friendly because you're going to be practicing these teardrops over and over and over again. So if you're feeling like you need practice making these even, this is the project for you. I'm going to do the same thing with the medium colors. Roll it all the way to the end. Let it open up in my hand as naturally as I can, as even as I can. Hold the center eye there. That's a good tip if you feel like your eyes of your teardrops are kind of getting wacky and going off to the side. Hold it with one hand while you're pinching the other side, and that'll keep it in place. And then this is the last of the sizes of the petals. This is that coral color. Same thing, roll it all the way to the end and make a teardrop. Now, like I said, you're going to need a lot of each of these. So I use between 8 and 10 of each color. I would go ahead and make 10 for each flower because you'll see when we start putting it together, sometimes you might need 10, sometimes you might need less. So you might as well just make 10. And that way you know you'll have enough and you'll get all that good practice in. So here we go. You can see that because the strips were different sizes, the teardrops are slightly different sizes. And here is all of my teardrops in my little piles ready to go. We can start putting together our first of our 2 examples of our zinnias. I have my cork board ready to go with some parchment paper on top. I'm going to be using tacky glue to put these together. I have my pins if I need them and some tweezers, and then I also have the center that we made in the beginning of the video. So I just do a little pile of my tacky glue on my board here, and that way I can just use my needle tool or a toothpick or even a little paintbrush to get the smallest amount of glue at a time that I need, because all I'm going to be doing is just putting the tiniest bit right in the middle of each of these teardrops. This is the largest of the 3 petal sizes that I made, and I have, like I said, 10 of them there. So just a little bit of glue right in the middle where each of these meet if they are naturally just sitting next to each other. No glue on the points of these teardrops. And as they keep going in a little row here, they naturally are making kind of like a ring of these petals. So that is what we're looking for. Again, you don't need a lot of glue, especially the tacky glue. It really sets up very quickly and very nicely, very firmly. So you need a very small amount of glue. And in the interest of making this very long video a little bit shorter, I'm jumping ahead here to show that not only have I finished that coral color ring by putting them all in a circle, but I have my next size here, that deep yellow, in a ring as well. I did exactly the same way, and I have both of them with some tacky glue starting to set up. They're not totally dry yet, but they are set up enough where I can start touching them. So now I am going to put these two layers together, but I want them to stick together, but not, be super solid where they can't move still. So I'm just going to add the tiniest amount of glue around the inside circle of this ring. And you can see here, I'm not being really delicate with it. It's not being very neat and orderly, just getting some glue on there. And then I'm going to pick up the middle layer, this second size. This was the one that was the 11 inches. And getting that set up, kind of alternating where the petals are lying so you can see the layer underneath it nicely. You can see here it's still movable. That tacky glue is not super firm yet, but it is going to just set up enough where we can, like I said, just keep moving stuff around. And at this point, I'm going to get my centerpiece and all of my lightest color petals, or my smallest size petals, and I can start putting them on as well. This time, instead of gluing them to each other to make a ring, I'm going to put, again, a little tiny bit of glue on the inside circle of my petal ring. And then I'm going to glue each petal individually to that as well. So use your tweezers if you'd like to, because we're going to do a little dipping here and it'll save your fingers from getting gluey. And again, just kind of shingle them around where they are not on top directly of the petal underneath of it, so you can still see kind of everybody around. And we can spread these out a tiny bit. They don't need to be touching the petal next door. So this is where that between 8 and 10 business comes in, because, if yours maybe are pinched slightly different or what have you, maybe you might need more on this layer or even on the other layers. There we go. And I also, this is kind of a me thing, I don't know if anybody else does this, but I like my teardrops all to have that center design that it kind of makes naturally by the pinch of the paper. I like them to all have the same direction. So that's why if you see me turning these one way or the other, it's because I want all of the inside layers to be facing the same way as the next petal. That's just maybe me. I don't know if anybody else does that. So at this point, I am just putting on my last few teardrops, and we're just going to jump ahead a couple minutes again. Now we have all of our smallest petals on. Now we're going to add our little center here with our fringe. So I'm going to dip that in the tacky glue again and just sit that in the center hole of this flower. And now at this point, this is where we're going to start kind of moving stuff around a little bit, because I want the smallest layer of petals to have a little bit of movement to them. You don't have to do this if you just want to put your centerpiece in there and have your petals all be kind of flat. That is totally fine. It will look adorable and be perfect. This is just something I like to do, is just have a little bit of movement in these petals. So I'm sort of pushing the center down, which, because it's hitting the edge of those smallest petals, is kind of pushing them up. And you'll also notice that I pushed my rings in a little bit and pinned them into place, which is also kind of helping the center of my flower get pushed up a little bit naturally here. And then you can move them around as you see fit, add pins if you need to. They're not all sitting at exactly the same level. They've just got a little bit of movement to them. I also want there to be some space between the fringe and that layer of petals. We're going to fill it in a moment. But you can see here, just kind of moving stuff around. Again, the good thing about tacky glue is it'll let you hold things in place, but they still have some movement in them, which is great for 3D flowers in quilling. So here is the part where we're going to fill in that little space, and we're going to make a spiral, which is not something I do too often. I do have a video only on making spirals, and I'll link that in the description box. But it's a matter of holding your paper at an angle and using your thumb and forefinger just to twist it around a needle tool. And you can see as it goes through, it's making this long little spiral shape. And then I'm going to use some scissors and just make a bunch of little pieces of this. They're about, I don't know, maybe about a 1/4 inch long to a 1/2 inch long. So just some little tiny pieces, because if you think back to the reference video from the beginning, and I said we're making the 2 different zinnias, the one that we're making with all the layers of the petals, right at the very inside, there's the fringe work, and then the petals start kind of unraveling, they're unrolling from that center. So they look like these little spiraled, rolled up petals. So that's kind of where we're going with this. So I have my whole little pile here of all little shapes of rolled up paper. You can roll them individually if you'd like to. This just made it go a little bit faster. And the spiral is a good technique because we don't get to do it too often. So there you go, and I can kind of re-roll them to make them a little bit tighter if they kind of get a little wonky from the snip. And then I'm just dipping them in that tacky glue again and just setting them between the 2 layers, the fringe layer and that first layer of petals. There you go, I'll make that again a little bit tighter. A little bit of glue on the end and just slipping it right in between. I know it's kind of hard to see because the fringe and the petals and this are all the same color. So as we get to a few more here, I'll show what it looks like when they're all done. So here we go. I'm just putting my last few in, and I don't have a count for this. This is just as many as I could have to fill up the space. So there you go. So you can see the 3 layers of teardrop petals, and then we have the spiral pieces, and then we had the fringed center. Now we are going to jump right into the other version of our flowers today. I have the same color paper that I used to make the center of our first flower, but this time, like I showed in the beginning, it's the 3/8 inch wide version, and it's a bit longer. This is about a 12-inch piece, and I am fringing this all the way down. So this will take a few minutes. So just get ready for that if you're making this flower. This is a little bit of an investment in time, this particular piece here. But just like before, you know, you don't have to be too precious with it. You just want to try not to snip through it if you can. If you do snip through it, we would attach it back together again. So don't worry too much about that. There we go. We're all the way to the end of that piece. You can see there's a couple of really weak spots there, but mine held together. If it didn't, I would, like I said, just glue it back together. So this is that tool that I showed in the beginning. This is a longer slotted tool. It just happens to have a longer gap to it where the slot is. That's really good for rolling up longer, wider fringed paper. Just can hold it a little bit better. This tool is actually made for making like long cones, which I've shown before in videos. It's just another use for this tool. So I'm rolling this up all the way to the end, and I am just about there. I'm not pulling too hard because I don't want my paper to tear, just holding it gently, but not letting it open up at all. So it's essentially a tight coil of fringed paper. And then I'm going to just apply a little bit of glue just on the end and get that rolled up. There we go. And don't worry too much about that center popping out. We're going to be able to push that right back in, because what we are essentially making here is kind of a dome of fringe. And we don't need to cut it at all. Nope. Doesn't want to stick here. Let's just get that to cooperate. There we go. We don't need to cut it at all to make sort of a dome of fringe. We're going to end up spreading out the fringe later, and that's going to kind of make it look like a little dome. We are going to make our petals now. This is a little bit easier because you don't need to do as much math. You don't need to worry about different size papers or even different colors on this version. I'm going to be making 20 of the same exact size. So 20 teardrops of 9 inches on this version of the Zinnia. But again, really great for practicing those teardrops, because look at all these teardrops I made, and I tried to make them as even as I could. So I have that, and I have the center that I just made of the fringed paper, and I have some tacky glue as well. And so I'm going to do the same thing. I'm just going to make my pile of glue in the corner of my workboard, and I do have my needle tool there again. I do have my tweezers again. And this is going to look pretty similar to the first version. I'm going to take half of these, 4, 5, 6, get that out of there. Okay. And so just like before, I'm going to be putting some glue between the petals and in the same exact spots. Like I said, this is going to look exactly the same as the last one. That's why I decided to do the 2 versions of this flower in the same video, because the process is so similar. And even if you look in like a zinnia garden, you're going to see the 2 different versions together a lot of times. And somebody tell me, because I'm not, an expert on flowers, they might be the same flower in different process of blooming, or they might be 2 different versions of zinnias. I don't know, but I would love for somebody to tell me, and leave that in the comments if you are a lot more knowledgeable than I am. I should look these things up sometimes, but I don't think of it until now. And here we go. We're just doing, like I said, the same exact thing. This is just rings of the flower petals. I have my ring all finished up there. There it is again. Oops. And now I'm going to, everything's flying out of my hands. Now I'm going to use the same tacky glue and put a little bit all along the bottom edge of that dark red fringed coil that we made, all the way around. And I'm going to place that all the way down in the center of the ring of petals that I made. So get that all the way down. And if you notice that there's a couple spots where the petals don't reach, that's okay, because you can kind of move them around a little bit. You can also, if they're not staying where you want them to, you can pin the point of the teardrops close to the center if you need to. So you can, there you go, just kind of anywhere there's a gap and you want it to be a little bit more secure, you can just use a pin and just place them right between a layer of paper of your petals and just get them to sit right, get that to focus, we go, right up against the inside of our flower, and we're going to set that aside to dry. Now I'm going to grab that thinner of the pale yellow paper that I used in the first flower. It is just your standard 1/8 inch wide paper, and I am going to make some very thin pieces out of that by cutting it in half. If you have, you know, a 1/16 inch paper, if you have a 2mm, you can use that. I have about 1-inch pieces here, and I'm going to glue them into a little X or a little cross here. This is what's going to make those little star-shaped pieces that were in our second Zinnia reference photo. And now they're not going to look exactly like stars because these are only going to have 4 points to them. So a little bit of artistic license here to make life a lot easier than trying to make these into true stars. So I have this 1-inch X, and I'm snipping almost all of it off. And you're going to say, like, why do we make them so big? Honestly, it was so much easier to make them really big and then trim each side down into a little point than it was to try to make them just a little bit bigger and then trim them down into a little point. So you can see I'm snipping each of these off on 2 different angles to make them sort of pointed. It's just, it gives you something to hold on to when these pieces are longer. I made these very small in the beginning, and between my eyesight and my clumsy fingers, I just had such a hard time that I was like, I should just make them bigger and then just cut them to the size I need. So that's where I ended up doing it. So each of those little X's cut off each side into a little point. And I think for each flower I have 8 of those. So I made all those and set them aside. And now I'm going to start adding my second layer of petals to my zinnia here. So they're the same size, so I didn't need to worry about which ones were which. And these ones, again, are just going to be alternating in space to the bottom layer so I can see each layer fully. So there's another one, and we're just going to put all of these around. There's just a little bit of glue right at the point of these, so it's meeting up to the fringed center and gluing to there. There we go, and you take your pins out if you use them as you need to. We're gonna, again, because this is such a long video, we're gonna sort of move to the end of this step. So now I have all of my petals all attached to the center fringe. I just want to kind of spread that out a little bit. That's kind of where I talked about making it into a dome earlier. Just going to spread it out, just mostly the edges. And we have our little pile of our stars as well. We do want to kind of form these into more of a 3-dimensional shape. So I found the easiest way to do that was to grab them with my tweezers in the center and then just push the edges up to make it sort of a cup slash star at the same time. And then I'm just going to gently dip it into a little bit of tacky glue and just kind of get it not all the way into the fringe, but sitting in there just a little bit. And so again, just using my tweezers, just kind of molding them around the tweezers to give them a little bit of shape, and then pushing them into the fringe. I'm going to keep going with that until I get a kind of a ring of these little yellow star pieces as well, all around the edge of the fringe center. There we go. We have those in a little row all around, and our second flower is complete. Now let's look at everybody all together here. You can see the 2 different versions. So one definitely a little bit more layers to it, a little bit bigger. You can, like I said, mix up the colors on these if you like to. You can make the first version completely solid, the same color. You can do different layers of the colors as well. And you can do these together. like I said, you'll see them, you know, growing together. There we go. That is my version of the zinnia. Really great for beginners. If you want to make these maybe a little bit more advanced, you can use a thinner paper. You can mold the petals a lot more. You can use that vinegar and glue mixture that I have shared in other videos that helps you mold the petals even more. If you want to kind of go a little bit further than this video here. So you have a lot of options. I'll link all that in the description box for this video. I'll also, like I said, link all of the tools and supplies in the description box for the video. You'll also find a link there to my Buy Me a Coffee page that you can see here, where you can find some quilling extras and other ways that you can support the channel and help me to be able to make these videos week after week. It's always greatly appreciated. Don't forget to leave any questions you have in the comments, and I'll answer those as soon as I can. Also, as always, be kind to yourself. Look out for your neighbors. Like and subscribe so you can be around for the next video, and I will see you then. Thanks so much for watching. Bye-bye.